joining us today. Leah, how are you? Welcome. We're excited to have you.
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yes, well, we appreciate you being here, and we'll just kick it off with, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? And we'll start with that.
Well, sure. As Liz stated, currently my husband is the Secretary of Defense. So we're here near Washington, D.C. We live in Northern Virginia. Fortunately, did not have to move or anything, prior to him taking the job. So that was nice. We have raised our 3 children in Northern Virginia. We have 2 sons who are 27 and 24, and we have a daughter who's 21. And they're all still in Northern Virginia, which is nice. And we just live here. I work as an executive director for an organization called Design Build Institute of America.
Okay.
I'm in charge of the Mid-Atlantic region, and so I work from home, which, especially in these times, has worked out.
Yes.
So just kind of been busy with that and trying to stay busy like everybody else, I guess.
Yes, thank you for that. I think later on in the chat, you might be able to give us some tips on working remotely from home. So we can go into that. And for our spouses that are joining us today, and for everybody else that's joining us today, if you want to type in the chat box where you're from, we love to see where everybody's joining in from around the world. So we know some of it, this is your afternoon, you're spending your afternoon with us. Some of it could be your evening, or it could be really early in the morning right now. So thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it, everyone. So Leah, could you tell us a little bit from where you're originally from?
Sure. And again, as Nicole said, thanks everybody for joining us, and I hope you enjoy this hour. I'm originally from Deckard, Tennessee.
Okay.
It's a very small town, it's between Nashville and Chattanooga, a little closer to Chattanooga than Nashville. And I grew up there. I was there until I went to college, born and raised. My parents had a farm there, and I grew up on the farm, which was very nice. Kind of a nice way to live. My mother's family had a farm that was actually sectioned off. She had 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and so each member of the family got a certain number of acres, and so we all lived out there. So it was nice to have that, your cousins and everyone around, and your aunts and uncles, and so it was very nice. And so graduated from high school in 82, Franklin County High School, go Rebels. Went to Memphis State University, and I went there on a golf scholarship.
Okay.
And played golf there, and graduated in 86, and then lived in Memphis for another year, and then moved to Nashville. And that's where eventually I met Mark.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Excellent. When you talked about golf, so that sparked my interest. I played golf when I was like in high school, and ever since then I really haven't had the time to play, but life. But so you started to play golf. How did you learn how to play golf?
Well, my dad is an avid golfer, and
Okay.
he's always been a really good golfer, and so he taught me to play when I was young. And it's living on a farm, he would hit golf balls out into the pasture, and my job was to pick them up. And we had cows, so as you can imagine, some of them came out a little dirty. So some of the balls weren't very clean, and I complained. And so he cut off a club, and he said, then hit them back to me.
Yeah.
And so that's how I started playing, was hitting the golf balls back to my dad on the farm. And then he taught me from there. And really, he and his friends were my teachers. I might have taken a couple of lessons here or there, but I never really took professional lessons. He was always my teacher.
And that's pretty cool that you ended up then getting a scholarship to play for college. So I love that.
Right.
And then I guess some golf questions then. What's your favorite club that you use when you golf?
Well, I would probably go with a 7-iron.
Okay.
people say that because it's pretty consistent and pretty easy to hit. Otherwise, if I'm hitting a driver, it could go anywhere. And
Yes.
my short game is not fantastic, so I wouldn't pick a wedge. So I think I'd pick right in the middle, about a 7-iron.
Okay. Yeah. So I always go with my handy 5-iron. So I'll try my 7 next time for sure.
Yeah, it's a little easier. It's a little shorter than the 5, so a little
Right.
easier to hit. Mm-hmm.
I love it. Well, and for the spouses that are in the chat box, what I'm actually curious to know is military spouses around the world, there's so many different types of golf courses that they can go to on base. So curious to know in the chat box, spouses, or the military spouses, if you want to type in what military golf courses you've played at before, we'd love to see that too. And we'll check in on a little bit with Liz to see what the responses are, and we'll check in. So let's see here. You talked about Mark and what he's doing right now. So how did you meet?
We actually met on a blind date.
Okay.
Yeah, I was working in Nashville. I worked for Honeywell, selling contracts on heating and air conditioning equipment, maintenance contracts. I wasn't really good at it, so, but that's okay. I majored in marketing, and, it went right down that road, and, it was a good job. I wasn't great at it. But anyway, so a woman that I worked with there at Honeywell, her husband knew Mark, she knew me, and so they set us up on a blind date. And we went with them as a double date to Nashville, downtown Nashville. They were having this concert, and it's called Summer Lights, and they do it every summer. As far as I know, I hope they still do it. But what they do is they block off the streets in Nashville, and at the end of each street, they have a different type of band. So you can listen to country or rock or whatever you want to listen to. And the couple that set us up were very big jazz fans, and there was a jazz concert going on. So we went down with them to listen to jazz. And about 5 minutes in, Mark turned to me and he said, "I hate jazz." And I said, "So do I." So we left them, found our own music, and just started talking, and went on another date the next day, and have been together ever since.
I love that. Well, what kind of music did you guys end up walking to and finding?
Well, he ended up going for me. I like country music, so we went to country, but it was, it was good. It was a good night. He likes country too.
Okay.
He's from Pennsylvania. We let him like country too.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Well, and I want to check in with Liz, because I see a lot of people are chiming in the chat box. So Liz, if you can let us know where the spouses are joining us, and any golfers out there.
We've got some golfers. We've got spouses from all over the world. I saw Germany. I saw Colorado, Rhode Island, Virginia, Pennsylvania. We're everywhere. We've got people who've golfed all around the world. Somebody who said she once took a helicopter to reach the tee on a golf course in South Africa. I'm asking more about that right now. That's amazing. So yes, we've got some golfers, and we've got people who've played on courses all over the world, from Japan to Oklahoma to Hawaii and everything in between.
Very cool. See, you guys didn't know you were going to talk about golf today, did you? Well, and I'm going to stick on this topic of golf, just because we talked before this Coffee Connection Live, and Leah shared a really cool story about a golf course that she played at in Scotland. So can you share a little bit about that story with us?
Sure. So I'm very lucky. Mark is not a golfer. He will golf, but a little reluctantly. I'm trying to get him out there more, but over the course of our marriage, he knows how much I like to golf, so he's set up trips for us. We've been to Chambers Bay in Washington. They played the U.S. Open there. We've been to Pebble Beach. We've been to Sawgrass down at TPC in Jacksonville. So we've had really nice trips. And for our 25th anniversary, he said, "All I want you to do is pack a bag, pack golf clothes, pack warm." And he said, "Because we're going to go somewhere." And I said, "Okay," but I didn't know. So when we got to the airport, he said, "We're going to Scotland." And I was like, "Oh, wow, this is the coolest, the birthplace of golf. This is where any golfer really would want to go." And so we went to St. Andrews, which is the first golf course. And so there's 3 ways you can play St. Andrews, okay? You can pay a travel agent a lot of money,
Yeah.
you know, to make sure you're guaranteed a tee time, right?
Yeah.
Or you can put your name in a lottery and hope that they draw your name when you're there. And the third way is to sleep on the bench outside the starter shack. And the minute they open up the next day, hope that there's an opening somewhere for a tee time.
Yeah.
And so when we got there, I said to Mark, I said, I know this is hugely expensive. You know, this is too much. And he said, no, he said, I was lucky. I won the lottery. I got my name in the lottery. But as we were unpacking, he did have a sleeping bag.
He was prepared. Good.
With his golf clubs, because he said, I was going to sleep on the bench if we didn't get it. So, so it was very sweet, because he is, like I said, not a golfer, but he does go and do that with me because he knows I like it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
Well, and did he do well when you guys played there, or did you win? Did he win? Who won? Are you allowed to say?
I'll say this. He's never beaten me at golf.
Okay.
But he can beat me at putt-putt, and it's just a killer for me. He beats me at putt-putt every time, and when we golf, he always says, if there was a windmill on this hole, I know I would win. And he would, but every putt-putt he has always beaten me, but never at golf. So
I love
I'm hoping to keep it that way.
Yes. Oh, putt-putt. I love putt-putt. So, and you talked about traveling all over the world, and I can see pictures of your family behind you, of places it looks like you've traveled to. Where are some of your favorite spots? Where do you recommend?
Well, I have been, I'm sorry, I'm reading some chat stuff.
I know there's so much going on.
I'm trying to get rid of it. No, we've always tried to take the kids as soon as Kate, so our kids are 3 years apart, each 3 years. So the oldest to the youngest is 6 years. And so as soon as she got to an age where we thought she would remember things, we started going bigger places. You know, we'd go on little vacations, but we started going on bigger places. And so every 2 years we've tried to go somewhere since she's been about 8.
Okay.
And so we've taken them to Italy, which was very special to us because our first son was born in Italy, in Vicenza. And so we got to go back to the apartment we lived in where he grew up. He had never seen it, so that was very fun.
Yeah.
We've been to the Grand Tetons just for a vacation, or Puerto Rico, or wherever. The picture here, this one, I don't know if people can see it. That is actually in Turkey. That was our last big family vacation, and we went to a place called Cappadocia. Okay. And Cappadocia is an interesting town that has interesting land formations, and you really look it up because it's just weird. But a lot of the homes are in caves. They side of mountains, so they live in these caves. So we went with the kids, and we got a hotel room that was a hotel that was caves. All the rooms were caves. And so you go in and you were in this cave, and it was just fascinating, this ceiling and all this, and it was just the coolest thing until the next day. And then you realize all your clothes are wet because you've left them in the cave. So then you had all your clothes outside the cave after that, but it was really, really cool. And so we've always tried to every 2 years save up and go somewhere. So we're hoping, this year we kind of got canceled, and we're hoping maybe next year we'll get to go somewhere again. It gets harder as the kids get older because of the, they have their jobs and their vacation days, and they don't necessarily want to use them on mom and dad. So sometimes, that happens, but we're hopeful we'll get together. Hopefully over Christmas, we'll get to go somewhere else.
Good. Good, good, good. Well, thank you for sharing that. I was going to ask about the caves. Well, you said it was like wet, your clothes were wet. Was it cold inside? And like what time of the year did you guys go?
We were there in the summer, but it was damp.
Okay.
But it wasn't cold. It was fine. It was just damp. And even, we should have known, because even like the bed linens and the towels, everything was just damp.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah. And I didn't put that together until it was a little late, but that's okay.
Hey, that's okay. I mean, what an experience though, to say that you were there, you stayed in a cave. That's pretty cool.
It was very, very cool. Very cool. I recommend it.
Yes, yes. And I want to check in with anything that should be radar, or any questions out there that we can get to, Liz?
We did have a question so far, although it's a little bit off topic. It might be something we're going to touch on later. We got some avid putt-putt enthusiasts in here who are relating with your husband's love for putt-putt anyway. And somebody who said Vicenza was one of their duty stations and it was her favorite. So everyone's relating to what you're saying over here.
Okay, great.
Good,
Yeah.
good, good.
I would have to say Vicenza was our favorite as well, not only because Luke was born there, but it was just a fabulous place to live. Yeah.
Perfect. And he was born there, and that was your firstborn?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Any special stories there with?
Well, yeah, Luke was actually the first diaper I ever changed. So
Okay.
I wasn't a babysitter growing up. I didn't do that to make money. I should have, but I didn't. And so it was a little intimidating to have a baby in a foreign country by yourself and never have changed a diaper. So that and the hospital on Vicenza was a field hospital. It wasn't a full hospital. They had 8 beds. And in order for you to have your baby at that hospital, you had to say you're good with just Tylenol, because that's all they could give you. Yes. So, yes. So being the first, I was a little nervous, and the just Tylenol thing. But the other choice was to go downtown, which I know now has really improved, because Mark and I have been to Vicenza, and now they have interpreters for you, and so it's a different situation from 28 years ago when I was there. But anyway, because at that time, if you went to the Italian hospital, someone had to bring your meals, someone had to change your sheets, someone had to, really take care of you. And I love Mark, but I didn't really see that happening. So
yeah, exactly.
I really wanted to have that baby at the field hospital, and I did, and it turned out great.
And it worked out for him, because then you got to take him back and show him this is where you were born, and everybody, won in that situation. I love that you shared the diaper story though, because very similar situation in our family. My husband was told that you're not supposed to let your wife change the baby's diaper the first 2 weeks, and he believed it. He thought that, sorry husband, but and so for the first 2 weeks he changed the baby's diaper, and then when it was my turn, like 2 weeks later, I was like, okay, I'll help out now, and then I got to our baby, and I was like, backwards, I don't know which way does the Velcro go, I don't know, I don't remember. So thank you for sharing that.
You should have told him a year.
I know 2 weeks is not long enough, but oh, good stuff. All right, so I know that you have also traveled around the world talking to military spouses, and what have you found common themes, or what have military spouses shared with you that you could share with us as you've talked to them?
Yeah. Well, as you probably know, Mark was Secretary of the Army prior to becoming Secretary of Defense. And when it came up for him to possibly be Secretary of the Army, we sat down and we talked about it, and he said to me, I only want to do this if we do it as a team. And because, and military spouses all know that, you're a team, you're always a team. And so I said, okay. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, if I go to Fort Campbell and I talk training and equipment and logistics and all that kind of thing, if I do that, At the same time, I want you to go talk to junior spouses, to talk to the daycare centers, to talk to the schools, to talk to the hospitals, and find out exactly what's going on from the family perspective.
Yeah.
And so I've been very fortunate that I've been able to do that and go on trips with him when that's been a possibility, when I've been able to meet with spouses. And it's always funny because I meet with the spouses and I'll tell them, look, we know everything's not rosy. Everything's not rosy anywhere, any situation, right? But I always tell them, I said, there always is good,
right?
But what we also want to know the bad, because if we don't know the bad, you can't fix it.
Yeah.
And that's huge with Mark, and it's huge with me, that we want to try, if in any way, if we can, to fix anything that's going wrong. And what I do find talking to spouses is they're so resilient. You do not, military spouses, take the bull by the horn and they get the job done. That's the way it is. And you don't, they're very reluctant, I will say, to complain. They're reluctant to say anything because they don't want to seem unappreciative, or I don't know what it is, but it's the makeup of a military spouse. And I've seen it forever. And I know how military spouses are. And so it's really a nice thing to go out and talk. And if there is something that comes up and in any way, if I'm capable of trying to help, I always want to try to help, because, and we talked about this before, Nicole, that, it may be a tiny thing to you, or a tiny thing to me,
Right.
a big thing to you, or a big thing to me and a tiny thing to you. But if we could help each other and we could fix that thing, then, it makes an impact on people's lives. And that's what I try to do. That's my aspiration. I don't know if I always get there, but that is my aspiration.
Well, I mean, it's so true how the small things can make a big impact. So yes. And thank you from military spouses around the world to you, Leah, for doing that and talking to spouses and coming on to the installations and bases and, hearing what they have to say, because that, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. So,
right. And I will say what happens is, we usually will fly one place, spend the day, fly somewhere else, spend the day. And so when we both get back on the plane, Mark will say, "What'd you learn? What's the word? What's happening?" And I've been able to bring up a few things that, and it makes me happy that I've been able to bring up a few things that have changed, and policies have changed. And so I remember the second or third place I went, and Mark was Secretary of the Army at the time, and one of the spouses came up to me, and I was asking about the hospital, and honestly, I don't even remember where it was, so I apologize, and I was asking about the hospitals and that kind of thing, and she just mentioned, she said she had just had a baby, and I said, "Oh, that's wonderful." And she said, "Well," and she was very young, and she said, "Well, the only thing is I wish I could have stayed longer in the hospital." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "Well, I had to leave after 18 hours. And I was like, whoa. No, no, the law is 48. Okay. So, and I was pretty sure I knew that the law was 48. So I went back and the law is 48. And I told Mark, I said, and he's like, no. And so this whole thing started snowballing. And so now it's set. Because after that, everybody who I would ask, they were like, "We know it's 48. Okay.
Right.
Let's just make sure, because, we want to make sure that our families are taken care of, So, and sometimes I worry, because sometimes our spouses are young, that maybe they're either hesitant to say anything, or, you just want to make sure that they feel like they have their voice and that they're heard.
Right. Good. Thank you for that. I mean, again, we appreciate you and doing even the small things make the big difference. So absolutely. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And when I was reading your bio, I saw that you wore many, many, many very different hats as a volunteer. So if you could share a little bit about your volunteer experience, how you got involved, like why you do it, we'll talk about that.
Okay. Well, number one, I'm from Tennessee. It is the volunteer state. So we're going to go with that.
And we're done.
That's the end of that story. It's mandatory that we all volunteer. No, I've just always enjoyed meeting people and getting out. And I think the best way to do that is to become involved. And yeah, you're right. I was thinking the other day after we talked about it, I was like, wait, I have done a few things that I had forgotten about. You know, I've been a Cub Scout leader and a pool president of our former neighborhood, and a PTA president and a booster club president. And so, I try to get out and again, try to make things better. I hope that people find that after I'm there, it's better and not worse.
Right.
That's your big hope. But, so I do try to do my part to make things better. And I think that's important for everybody. I think it ties you to your community.
Right.
It gets you involved. And, sometimes I think with military spouses, it can be a little lonely if you are in a situation. Well, for us, example, when Mark came to work for the Pentagon, we didn't really have a unit. Like when you're in Vicenza, you've got your unit. When you're in Campbell, you've got your unit. But in DC, it's kind of weird. Right. And so I didn't have a unit, and I was a little disconnected. And I think that it helps you to connect even for yourself. And I think that's another important thing, is that sometimes being a military spouse, you're all about your spouse, you're all about the family, you're all about, you need to do for yourself. Right. And, whether that's, for me, it's golf right now, or, for volunteering or getting involved in whatever interests you, I think it's very important that you do take that time to, take that for yourself.
Yeah. And I love that you bring that up, because it has been such a common theme on every single Coffee Connection Live that we've done, is that everybody, the advice that we keep hearing is, please just make sure you're taking care, whether it be 15 minutes to do something for yourself, or, make sure if you have a hobby, then focus on it a little bit, make sure you are taking time to do something that you love, and same with volunteering. So thank you so much for sharing that. And then I know that you've volunteered at the USO before, right?
That is correct.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
It was, what happened, Mark, when he worked at the Pentagon, actually worked with J.D. Crouch, who is in charge of the USO. I don't know his official title, but he's the big guy.
Yep.
CEO. And JD several years ago invited us to the USO dinner. And we went, and we were sitting there, and they had the slogan come up on the screen, and it said, "Be the force behind the forces." And it was a pitch for people to volunteer for the USO. And at the time, our daughter was going to leave for college in about 2 years, and she was my last one at home. And I turned to Mark at that dinner and I said, well, I could do that. Yeah. And so, because I love the organization, and I thought, well, that's something I could become involved in. And so I filled out the paperwork on the website, did that. And then I got in touch with Sheila Hutchinson down at the Fort Belvoir Center. She's wonderful. And went to, I think we had 2 classes or something we had to do there, and learn about stuff, and went to those, and then started volunteering on Wednesdays at the Fort Belvoir Center. Met some very lovely people, some spouses that were also there to volunteer, and some retirees that volunteered, and just the people that would come in and use the center. And it was a lot of fun. And I Mark got the Secretary of the Army job, and I had to call Sheila and say, look, I will come back.
Yes.
I'm from Tennessee. I'm a volunteer. I will come back, but I'm going to have to take a little leave, because I didn't want to mess her schedule up, basically.
Right.
You need people and you need to be able to count on them. And I couldn't tell you from one Wednesday to the next if I was going to be in town. So I didn't want to leave her hanging with that. But I am coming back one day. I don't know when, but I will be back.
I'm sure they understand. That's great. And thank you very much, because volunteers are the heart and soul of the USO. So we appreciate you for that as well. Thank you.
Oh, no, it's a wonderful organization. I've always felt that way. So.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you. And I did want to ask a question. One of the spouses that registered, her name's Michelle. One of her questions was if you could provide any advice for her when she's trying to find her community at a new duty station. Mm-hmm. So I see the volunteer play in that as well, but do you have any other advice that you could give from previous experiences or now?
Well, I think what helped me along the way was to reach out to people who were in your unit and had been there for a little bit, had some knowledge of the area, could give you some ideas of different places, whether it be on post or on the duty station or out in the community. Mm-hmm. There were good places to work and volunteer. The schools are always a good starting point. You can be a room mom and meet other moms, and we've all done that. And so there's lots of good opportunities, and even golf. It's not volunteering, but you can go to the golf course there. There's always a men's group, a women's group, someone where you can join. I have recently joined a group at Army Navy. And I have been in parts at Fort Belvoir. I have been in a women's group and at Fort Campbell or Fort Benning, I'm sorry. And so I've been in different women's groups, and just all very welcoming and a good place to meet people and just kind of start out. But I think first and foremost, go to someone that's already in your unit and kind of get their information. And there's always, all ACS, Army Community, well, I say ACS. I know we're all different, but I know more Army stuff. Sorry.
That's okay.
But go to the community service centers around on a poster basis and ask there too, because people are always looking for volunteers.
Yeah.
Thrift stores, everybody's looking for a volunteer.
Good. I love that. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And then we'll check in with Liz. And Liz, anything that needs to be on our radar, or any questions coming up?
We've got a couple questions in the Q&A box if you're ready for them.
Yeah.
Cynthia wants to know, what was one thing you wish you knew when your spouse transitioned from the military to being a civilian?
Yeah, that's a very good question. One thing I tell this story quite often. When Mark was in the military, we had tons of friends. That was great and everything. Then he got out, and then for about the past 20 something years, and he did Guard and Reserves and everything, but that's kind of different than active duty. But he got out and was in the public sector, right? So had public jobs, or would that be the private sector? I guess private sector. Anyway, so he had his own, worked for companies, no longer for the military. And one thing that stunned both of us was the immediate lack of community. And I don't mean that as a bad way, but it was shocking to us. And I tell people that because you come from a military background where you're used to having your unit, your people, your everything. And then when you transition, you're on your own. I will say that you're kind of on your own little island. And so sometimes people complain about, the military, they don't pay enough, blah, 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 blah. And then you come over to the private sector and you're like, well, I don't know anybody. and I do tell the story that from the past 20 years, and this is not an exaggeration, I can name 2 people that Mark has worked with prior to us getting back into the military. I consider Secretary of the Army back into the military. 2 people, because you don't get together. You don't have that sense of community that you do in the military. And we recently celebrated our 30th anniversary, and we decided to renew our vows. And so we were trying to determine who to invite, what to do. And so we're making the list, and we realized it was all our military friends. And he had been out for how many years? So it's just interesting. The transition can be hard in that way. And so it's interesting. And it's also a little bit hard. I think it was hard for Mark not to have although he works out all the time, but you had your mandatory PT, or you had your mandatory, and it was a little bit more regimented. And when it's off on your own, it's kind of a different story.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's what we faced. We both were kind of stunned at us being a little bit separated. And I will say, been very happy to be back.
Yeah.
So
That's an excellent question. Thank you, Cynthia, for asking that.
mm-hmm.
I agree. Very good question. I have to tell you that the chat box is blowing up, because when you were talking about how to adjust to life at a new duty station, everyone's been chiming in about their best tips and their suggestions for sort of getting settled and meeting people and making friends. And so many people are echoing what you say, volunteering and getting involved. It's coming in over and over. So people are really agreeing, and what you're saying is resonating for sure. So lots of FRG and libraries and volunteering and everything. So yes. Thank you for that. Another question comes from Kristen. She says, public life has got to be challenging. How do you handle living in the public eye and the media's opinions? And she wants to also say, Mrs. Esper represents military spouses extremely well. And we can all agree with that.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very sweet. I don't really have that much of a presence, so I don't really have that worry that I'm in the public eye. I mean, I know there's occasional times that I might be with people who are constantly in the public eye, but I'm not there. You do worry. You don't want to be scrutinized or whatever. And life is a little different for us now. And I'm sure it'll go back to normal as soon as all this is over. So, or what used to be normal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got another question that just came in, and it's interesting. I've seen this asked in other webinars that we've done, and I think it's a great question. What is the most positive change you've seen in the military spouse community from your early days to now?
Oh, wow. I think the involvement, I think for me, I kind of grew up in a time where rank mattered in a way, and it was sort of like those spouses wore their husband or wife's rank more than, I grew up in that time. I don't see that as much now, which I love. I don't enjoy that at all. So that is a big positive. I think I've heard good and bad about the use of social media, that now that, the meetings might not take place because we can webinar it, or we can social media it, or we can do this. I think that's good and bad, honestly. I think it's important. I mean, I know we can't right now, but I think it is important that you get out face to face and you meet with people. So that is a little concerning to me, that it's gone more to social media instead of the actual face to face. But I also get that people don't have time, and everybody's busy, and it's just one more thing, and I got to get a sitter, and blah, 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 I get all those things too. But I think that just the participation with the spouses is wonderful. Anytime they get together and they, like I said, determined, resilient group, they want to do something, man, they get it done. So I think that you find that too. In fact, I met a spouse, and I want to bring her up, in Ohio, named Bree McKinnon. And she was at one of my spouse lunches, and she mentioned that she couldn't get a job because her teacher's license wasn't good in Ohio. And so I was like, oh, she said, well, what I did was I contacted my representative, Ohio representative, and we've gotten together and we've written legislation and blah, 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 blah. Well, we got with her, and I introduced her to Mark, and we kind of sat down with her and said, what do you need? And now the state of Ohio, because of her, because of one military spouse really working on an issue, now has licensure reciprocity for all other states for military spouses. And you don't realize how big that actually is. It's not just teachers, it's hairstylists, it's dog groomers, it's, you know, it's so many people who need a license to practice in this state. And because of Bree and because of what she did, you know, she has been a hero for us. And it's just amazing how wonderful the spouses are.
That is so cool. I love that story. And I'm from Ohio, so go Bree.
Yeah. So that's a good one for you.
Yes.
There.
We'll go with one more question for now. Susan wants to know, have you been involved in any military chapels or chapel programs over the year?
Actually, no. When our children were raised Catholic, and so we tended to just go to the local Catholic church. We did have two that were baptized in military chapels, but no, we have not. And I have met with several chaplains when I go and on the road, and hopefully be back soon. When I go, I have met with several chaplains, and I've been able to hear about their programs, and they have some wonderful programs out there that I hope people will utilize, because, you know, even one that I sat through, I can't remember where it was. I'm sorry. I have no recollection of where I've been. But I did sit through a chaplain's program that was all about spouses and how to interact with your spouse, and you know, and we all have those things. We're married. They've got that one thing that bugs you, and you've got that one thing that bugs them, and you know, and so you have that. But it's wonderful, the programs that the chaplains do have out there, and hopefully people will utilize them.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then a question that I had that I'm a little curious about is, what kind of hobbies have you taken up since we've had to kind of stay home for the past couple of weeks?
Well, yeah, I've been very, very fortunate. Like I mentioned before, we have 3 children. Our boys live off on their own, but our daughter was in college when this happened. She was actually home from spring break, for spring break, and then just has stayed home since then. So she and I have become very involved in watching a lot of Project Runway.
Yes.
Yes. We had never watched it before, so we watched a lot of the old seasons, and we have become very, very involved in that. And by watching, we think by osmosis we can now sew. It has not turned out to be the truth, but I have a friend who has challenged us to a Project Runway challenge. Like, she sent us a challenge, make a mask. And so we have, I will show you, we have made several masks. Here's a Spider-Man.
How cool is that?
Yeah, so we have done that. And Kate, my pandemic partner, as I call her, we've cooked a lot.
Okay.
We've made things that we wouldn't necessarily make in real life, I guess. I don't know if you didn't have a ton of time. We've made donuts, and we've made ravioli, which was not worth the time. I'm going to throw that out there. It was, I mean, I think it would be if you really knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
And good at it, if someone had been there to teach us, but it was like a 3-hour process that, for like 8 ravioli, man, it was, yeah. So
you have to do that in Vicenza, you know, right?
Exactly. I need to, get a friend to teach me. We also did cannoli. That turned out okay. We did black and white cookies. We're doing churros this week. That's our big thing this weekend, is going to cook the churros. So we've been trying to, pretzels. They turned out great. Yes.
I'm seeing a theme though, because you're doing churros, so, and then there's like an influence there. There's pretzels, German.
Yes.
You've got ravioli, Italian. I like it.
Right. We've been trying to make different meals every night. The other night I made chili relleno, which I had never made before, but it was fun and it turned out okay. So, you try to, I figured this is the time that you have all kinds of time to make dinner. So let's just spend the time to try something new and then determine if we're going to have it again.
Well, I was going to ask, is there a meal that you, I just heard thunder. Sorry. I'm like, is there a meal that you keep making over and over again that you're just like, okay, we're just going to go to that meal again? Ours is tacos. So.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah.
Yes.
We, I have really been trying not to, but we get a lot with the ribs.
Okay.
Barbecue ribs are Mark's favorite, Kate's favorite. So we have a lot of barbecue ribs, I will say.
Is the recipe from your side or his side, or something you just found? Okay, I was gonna say.
Yeah, so it's slow and low in the oven. It's like 275 for about 4 or 5 hours, and then I broil them with the sauce on at the end. But they turn out really good.
Yeah,
so
it sounds amazing.
Yeah,
so we're all hungry.
Yeah.
I did want to ask, you talked about growing up on a farm, and you had cows, right? You had cows.
Yes.
So what do you miss living on a farm, and now that you live in the city, what do you miss not living on a farm? If that question makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And there's quite a bit of serenity on a farm. It's quiet. It's there's no traffic. There's no, there's just the cows. You hear them. Yeah. But I do enjoy that. I enjoy just on the farm when you could just look out the window and there's nothing behind you. There's no house. There's no, there's just land. Yeah. And so it was a great way to grow up, and I was very fortunate to grow up that way. I don't consider where I live now the city. Okay. but I mean, it's way more city than the farm. But it's different. I don't like traffic like anybody else. I don't, but it's nice. When I go home, it's a very small town, but we have big Walmart. We have the super Walmart. Ooh, yeah, I'm jealous of that because I don't have that in Burke. But we have the big Walmart, and every time I go home, I see somebody that I knew in high school. And it's just fun for me to go home and see old friends and and here, not that I don't, but I really rarely see anybody I know. Yeah. So I enjoy that part of going somewhere where you lived your life, the big bulk of your life, and then seeing those people from childhood. It's fun.
Well, and I think a lot of us can relate to just, memories and going back to your hometown, so for sure. And that would actually be fun to know where everybody's hometown is from. If everybody wants to type in the chat box where your hometown is from, we'd love to see where, I know you told us where you're all calling in from, but where are you from? And then Liz, I wanted to check in with you because we've got a couple more minutes left. Is there anything in the chat box or in the Q&A box that we should know about?
Oh, wow, the chat box is blowing up. I can't even read it as fast as everyone's hometowns are coming in. This is awesome. West Virginia, Georgia, Texas, El Paso, Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee. I just want to read that out for you, Mrs. Esper. I have to give a shout out to Brittany. She just shared an Instant Pot recipe. We were all talking about all the food that you've been making and how hungry we're getting for churros and pretzels. And she said that she makes Instant Pot ribs. And anyone who knows me knows that I just got an Instant Pot and I'm so scared to do it. Yeah. So she just shared a recipe. She sent a link and we can all try ribs in the Instant Pot now. So thanks for that, Brittany.
Well, Liz, it's interesting you say that. Well, maybe I turned it around, but over here on the floor, I just bought an Instant Pot, and it came in the mail the other day. And I got the one that has an air fryer with it as well. It's like 2 lids or something. I don't know, but the box was so big, I have yet to open it because I'm totally intimidated by the whole thing. So I'm a little frightened of it. So I haven't opened it yet, but I'm going to get to it.
I totally can relate to that. The best advice I got was from another Army spouse friend of mine. She said, don't read the instruction booklet, just go straight to YouTube. You'll find everything you need to know for the Instant Pot on YouTube. And
okay.
I have.
Yes, someone told me to do the water test. I don't know what that means, but that would make you feel better. I have no idea what that means. But anyway, I'm going to open it one day. I don't know. I got it for myself for my birthday, and it's been sitting there for 3 days. So I don't know.
Happy birthday.
Oh, it was last week, but thank you.
But still, we like any reason to celebrate. So
yes, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Me too.
That's exciting. And it sounds like, Liz, we'll need to do an Instant Pot 101 for all military spouses. So stay tuned for that, everybody. We'll figure this out because I am very afraid of the Instant Pot. We have one, and it's just.
Yeah. No, it's literally right there on the floor. It's humongous.
It's staring at you.
Yes, it is. It's been. I need to open it. That's going to be my goal this weekend. Open it and don't be scared. Okay.
Yep. Try something new, right?
Yeah.
Now's the time.
Exactly.
Seize the day. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up. Unless, Liz, was there anything else that we need?
There is one question in the Q&A box that I did want to raise, and Mrs. Esper, you've spoken about talking with military spouses and raising issues up to a higher level when needed. This is kind of a big question, but it's timely because of COVID and unemployment. So it's a little bit of a long one, but we're hoping that maybe you can help out. Brittany wrote, one of the things military spouses are facing right now is a delay in processing unemployment claims due to having lived in multiple states over the last 18 to 24 months. The claims process is not as easy as it is for those that live in one state for years at a time. Due to MSRRA, a spouse can have residency in one state but work in another. Seems to cause issues with filing unemployment in the state where they're currently stationed. She says, because this is a federal act, but it trickles down to the states, unemployment is state run. Can the SecDef work with the House and the Senate to get this fixed for spouses across the states?
That is a great question, and I'm glad she brought it up. Was that Brittany? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that question, Brittany. Actually, I will ask Mark about that. I have no idea, but I will bring that up to him because when you say that, it makes perfect sense that it's going to be a problem. You know, the way it's laid out, the way it works, but it shouldn't be. So let me ask him and see what he can do about that because that is an excellent question.
Great. Okay, good. Thank you very much for asking that question, Brittany. And before we go, something that we did last week in our Coffee Connection Live, we had all of the spouses that have a LinkedIn profile share it in the chat box so that the other military spouses can network with each other after this conversation. So if you have a LinkedIn profile and you want to put it out for other spouses to connect with you, just another way to connect with other military spouses, please do that now in the chat box. And it's just going to be shared in our live group right now. It won't be in the recorded version if you're watching this later. But Leah, thank you so much for this conversation. It has been so much fun getting to know you, having coffee with you, of course, talking about golf and traveling. Been fabulous. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. And I also wanted to say, I don't really look at LinkedIn. So my daughter will tell you I'm technologically challenged, but I don't really do much social media. But I do have an email account. It's leah.l.esper@gmail. And if anyone has an issue or, you know, just wants to email me something they think I need to know, I would be happy to get it.
Great.
So,
Thank you for that. And, yep. And perfect. Liz put it in the chat box, so it's there. And then I wanted to give everybody a heads up with what's going on in the next couple weeks. So next week, wow, June 4th, the USO is hosting a virtual event with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, Robert Wilkie, and that will be from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And then June 8th, financial expert Susie Orman will be talking with the USO at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And then on June 11th, we're really excited to talk to Lindsay Hafner, who is a military spouse, but also a Google IT recruiter. And that's going to be June 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So we've got a lot going on. You will receive an email with this information if you signed up for this event. So if you, for some reason, you're not getting the links or you didn't get the time written down, we'll make sure to share that with you as well. But thank you everyone so much for joining us. We appreciate you having a coffee with us or water or whatever you're drinking with us today. And Leah, thank you again, and hope you all have a fabulous weekend. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Yep, bye.